Hi, everyone. Sheena here. Thank you for listening to Evolved Being. Today, we are talking about emotional intelligence. So, really diving into what emotional intelligence is, if you are naturally given it, if you're not, how to develop it, and the things that it helps us with in life. Specifically, I'm going to be talking about managing emotions, listening to emotions, and not being reactive to emotions. And if we are reactive to emotions, how to forgive ourselves and let go after those emotions have surfaced and projected outwardly. And then we'll talk a little bit about how emotional intelligence can help you in your life, can help you build a business, can help you be a successful entrepreneur, can help you with your day to day life duties like jobs or children or family or school. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So stick around. Hi, everyone. Sheena here with Evolved Being. Don't forget to like the channel here, subscribe, and listen in. I've officially made this more of a podcast now, so you can also find me if you're not listening right to it right now on Spotify. And I'm working on putting it up on Apple Podcasts, and then you've got my YouTube channel as well. So emotional intelligence and why and what and has this, where did this even come from, really, right? Like, I feel like we never really talked about emotional intelligence. I'm 37. I don't remember my mother ever bringing up emotional intelligence when I was young, and perhaps that was brought up, but not in my household. And I never really heard that word until much later, when I was discovering myself a bit more, until I started to get more into psychology, deeper into my counseling and my therapy. And then as I started to research for my business, and what I found, and what I've found over the years, is I certainly lacked emotional intelligence. And as I have learned to develop it myself, I realized that it is something that we can help others develop. And it's certainly something that serves us as humans. So, starting with what is it, right? Emotional intelligence is just the awareness that we have emotions running through us. It's the awareness that we can let our emotions become us and overtake us. And it's also the awareness that we can create emotions and cultivate emotions so that we can do what emotions do to us naturally, sometimes, and unconsciously, in a conscious state, and affect our world in that way. So how do we get from, this space where it's unconsciously happening to us, or emotions are passing through us and becoming us and dictating our life, to a point where we can dictate our own life through our choice in emotions, right? There's a big gap there. And certainly not everyone needs to get to the point where they're conjuring up certain emotional states to produce effort and effect in their lives. However, you can if you want to. And I believe it's useful to learn that awareness so that in the middle there somewhere, you're not being ruled by your emotions. And emotions are great, right? They're great. This is not to say emotions aren't great at all in any way. I know plenty of artists and creative people and a lot of people who use their emotions for art, for a product, for energy, for power. And I think that's all very cool. It's just when emotions really take us over that it's hard. It's hard to manage and deal with our lives. And I think that's a lot about the difference between life happening to us and then us happening to life. And that's a huge thing that I discuss a lot, and a lot of the concepts I talk about, certainly with my clients in working with creating your life or creating your own reality, and definitely in my world and understanding myself and building my own business and my own world for myself. So emotions are beautiful things. They're waves, they're intense, they can bring us to inspiration, they can bring us to enlightenment, they can bring us to spaces that a lot of other things, even the logical thinking mind, can't necessarily bring us to. And there are many different emotions. And if you look deep into psychology and you look into what emotions are, there's primary emotions and there's secondary emotions. There's emotions that have a layer underneath them that are ruled by a different priority or another emotion altogether. So like anger is one of those, right? We can call that, it feels like that emotion that kind of comes out outwardly. It's expressive. It pushes us to either get things done sometimes. It pushes us to do things that we don't like sometimes. It pushes us into places where we might find pieces of ourselves that we don't feel like is natural, but it showed up in a space of anger. And I think sadness is a lot like that too. It can push us to behave in ways we don't want to behave. It can push us to feel pain, and then our primary motive is to stop feeling that pain. So it creates all these extra things that happen after it. But I do believe deep down, especially with anger, for instance, there's something else driving that a lot of times, and it's anger is oftentimes triggered. So it's like a bursting emotion. It's something that happens, and then you can be reactive to it, and then the world around you could kind of shift in that moment because of the anger that was put outward. But generally speaking, it's a triggered emotion. So deep down, there might be something attached to that moment in time that triggered that emotion, and that dormant energy within us that shows up in anger actually comes out. And a lot of times, when working with people with the emotion of anger, the question a lot of times is, what has happened in your past that has made you angry? What has happened in the past? How do you manage sadness, right? Because sometimes sadness is like a deeper seated anger, and anger is like that way that our masculine energy kind of takes over and says, you know what, I'm not going to be sad in this situation. I'm going to be angry. I'm going to deal with this in an intense way, because deep down I am hurt, or I've been hurt. And for me, certainly anger came up a lot in my life when I was sad or when I was frustrated, but I didn't know that at the time. It was just these outbursts. For me, it was anger showed up when I couldn't communicate to someone, when I was trying really hard to communicate and we were lacking that understanding and communication. Anger would just burst out of me, and I had to deal with it quite a bit as a child, for sure. I had a lot of anger, and then in my teenage years, in my young adult years, I punched a lot of walls. There was a lot of expressive anger that would come out from a deeper seated sort of sadness that was in me. And as I grew older, I had to really learn to come to terms with that sadness inside me and learn to respond to it and nurture in it and give to it in a different way. So that's how we can see how emotions kind of ebb and flow, and how they're always not exactly what they are. I think another one is I get it confused, and my last little talk was about anxiety, and that freedom from anxiety. And we talked a lot about how do you distinguish the difference between anxiety and excitement. Sometimes, if you really think about it, they kind of are the same feeling from the inside. The physiological response feels a lot similar. More like excitement and anxiety is this rising up of energy. I can't go to sleep right now. Like, I've got a lot in me. What do I do with it? And sometimes that you can see how that feels that way when you're excited, and then also feels that way when you're anxious. And I think that goes, for certain emotions too. We just, in emotional management, is that we don't always know what we're feeling at that moment because something takes us over, right? So sitting back as emotions come up, that's where the emotional intelligence come in, right? Having some awareness, education, everything we just talked about, researching more about emotions, and then taking that question to ourselves and say, like, why am I experiencing this right now, this emotion, this overwhelming emotion? And being able to step back time after time again. And if you've ever been to an anger management course, or if you've seen the movie Anger Management even, you'll see, like, they'd say that count to 10. Well, why does that work? That works because you're taking a step back. You're becoming more mindful of the entire experience. And it seems simple and easy and little, and not, how could this possibly help shift my emotions? But it does. And that's what it is, the counting to 10, or saying a mantra in your head, or coming up with a sentence when you feel that emotional overwhelm. taking that step back, becoming mindful of the experience, that's emotional intelligence. That is a good indicator that you're beginning to become aware of the emotions. And then you can say, wait, I want to react or I don't want to react. For me, I have a hard time. I had a hard time communicating as a child, and then I told you I'd get that anger when I couldn't explain it to someone. Well, I'm an empath, and I feel a million things at once, and I'll be sitting in an experience, and when there's a lot of emotions coming from the other people or the people around me and myself in the moment, I am stunted, literally stopped dead in my tracks. So of course, I can't communicate in those times. So for me, taking a step back, even meaning like going to my room for a little bit, running through the stuff in my mind, and then being able to come back and communicate what was going on is a big thing for me. Because if I respond in that moment, I lose all that sort of wisdom and traction. And then I've all of a sudden seen for my irrational emotion that was just projected into the room or to whomever it was put out towards. So I have to go back. I need that time. I need that time by myself. I need 20 feet away from any other energy to sit down and say, okay, what's happening with me right now? Right? So that's for me. But for everyone, stepping back, taking a moment to say, what is this emotion I'm going through? What's it connected to? Right? Is it really this moment I'm experiencing, or is it an old moment? Is it a moment that's triggered a pattern or a belief system or a pain or a fear? Or do I feel unstable right now? Are my main priorities in life being threatened? All those things come up surrounding emotions. And I'm talking kind of in the more anger, sadness, frustration, fear, sort of emotions. But this can happen in excitement too. It can happen by being overwhelmed by an exciting experience, and we can change, and that could affect the way we act, our character, identity. I think we just went through some holidays recently, and it's an exciting time. It's could be a scary time. There's a lot to look forward to. There's a lot to maybe be scared of, if you're going into situations with family that you don't necessarily always want to be in, and there's fear and there's excitement and there's this and there's that, and then it all like kind of happens. And yeah, we can say, okay, that was an exciting moment, but I'm all of a sudden feeling a little bit, low from it, or I'm running, still 100 miles an hour from it, right? So even the excited emotions or the emotions of happiness, they can get to us. They can get to us, and they can move us in certain directions. So even having awareness when great things are happening to us, so that we remain humble, so that we remain wise in those moments, so we don't trip up. I'll tell you, in my life, I think some of the most exciting moments of my life, they led me to some destructive patterns because I wasn't paying attention, because I thought, oh, joy and happiness, all right, this is what I should feel all the time. And then I lose my sense of awareness and my sense of identity in the moment, and then I act out, or I act goofy, or I do something, and then I sort of like snap back into this humility period where I'm like, oh shoot, that wasn't me either. So emotions, and especially what like the yogis teach you and things like that, learning to that emotional awareness is to be able to kind of set, okay, this neutral observer even while the emotions are going on around me. And then the next step is using emotions to serve you. So even when you're not feeling emotions, or when you're a little bit more in a balanced state, emotions are an energetic movement. Their energy, they're intense, they're heightened. And if you listen to any of Tony Robbins, most of his work is done in an emotional state. He talks a lot about emotional state being a powerful state, and he teaches us how to conjure up, to cultivate high emotional states in order to create in our lives. So that's the other side of that. That's the learning and the being able to use our emotions to create and manifest and move our world in a helpful and useful way. And that's what I have for you on emotions today. I think we talked about it all, right? It's a responsibility. Having emotions is pretty common. It's human nature. I mean, there are some people who don't have necessarily emotions, that might have some different brain things going on. But for the majority of us, we all feel emotions, and we all sort of put our emotions into an emotional definition, what dictionary of what emotions are. And they're a lot more than that, right? So we have this collective consciousness surrounding emotions, and then we have the human experience, and then we have this other world where we're learning more and more, and we're receiving more information about how to use our human experience, how to use our emotions to create the experience we want, rather than living out lives that don't necessarily serve us or make us as joyful and happy because we feel like we don't dictate anything in them. So a lot of my work, and always what I talk about, is always that other side of things. It's a responsibility, it's a privilege to live a life where you get to create your own reality. It's not everyone's destiny right now. We would hope that over time we bring more people into a world where they have that capacity, but certainly it is a privilege right now. It is definitely something of an industrialized world. It's something of a mature world, of an adult world, of a world that's responsible for taking care of the people that don't have that access yet. And we are the forefront of that. So emotional intelligence can really help us on an individual level, but definitely on a worldly level too. We can really learn to be responsive to all the emotions that are happening in this world, and still work with ourselves to create a world that serves more and gives more to the world around us. And that would be my hope for emotional intelligence, and that would be my hope in general for my work and what I do, and for this podcast, Evolved Being. And I love to hear your thoughts. Please make comments. Please check me out on my website, evolvedbeing.com. I work with people. So if you're working to establish a stronger connection to your emotions, if your emotions are overwhelming you in any way, please reach out. I would love to work with you. I can work with you right here on the computer, so you could be anywhere with good internet, or you can come into the office here in Las Vegas, and I would love to work with you. Have a beautiful day. We're approaching a new year, so happy new year. Please like and subscribe, whatever platform you're listening on today, and have a beautiful day.